Well, Poland's prime minister has welcomed a ruling from the country's top court. Earlier, the Constitutional Tribunal rejected the principle of the primacy of EU law over national legislation. It said some EU treaty articles are incompatible with the Polish constitution. Brussels and Warsaw were already at odds over press freedom, gay rights, and the independence of the country's courts. Let's cross now to Brussels and speak to our correspondent, Dave Keating. Hello to you, Dave. Tell us just what has been the reaction where you are.
Well, the Commission's reaction was swift, if not entirely forceful. They came out with a statement yesterday rejecting that tribunal's ruling and saying, quote, "The Commission will not hesitate to make use of its powers under the treaties to safeguard the uniform application and integrity of Union law." What that always means when the Commission says it is that they're going to pursue infringement proceedings against the member state involved. The problem is, guess who those infringement proceedings go to? The European Court of Justice, the very EU Supreme Court, which Poland is now saying it won't listen to. So a lot of people are calling for more urgent action to be taken because this could very, very quickly turn into a constitutional crisis for the EU. Members of the European Parliament are calling on the Commission to actually freeze all EU budget payments to Poland. And specifically, what can be done in the short term is withholding the 24 billion euros that Poland is due as part of the Pandemic Recovery Fund. That still hasn't been approved. It needs a qualified majority approval of the EU member states. And now there's real doubt about whether that can be applied. The reason why this is so fundamental and why this could provoke an EU constitutional crisis is because this is the very basis of EU law. To make a kind of stretched metaphor, it would be kind of as if the governor of Texas set up a tribunal, instructed the tribunal to make a ruling saying that Texas law takes precedent over the U.S. Supreme Court, and then they did so. That would surely provoke a constitutional crisis in the U.S., and we could see something very similar here. And it's why some are saying that this is putting Poland on the road to, quote, Polexit. The European People's Party said that it's a political family in Europe that includes Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and German Chancellor Angela Merkel. France's Europe Minister Clément Beaune also said that a little earlier today. And the idea is not that the Polish government wants to take Poland out, but that's where this is headed.
Yeah, and Dave, if we remember, Texas did try to secede from the United States. So how realistic is the prospect of Poland leaving the EU, the so-called Polexit?
Well, the government doesn't want Poland to leave the EU, and neither do the people. The most recent survey from last year found that 8%, just 8% of Polish people want their country to leave the EU. So it's not a popular idea, but the idea is that Poland signed an accession treaty which took effect in 2004, which said that it would follow European Court of Justice rulings. So this is essentially a violation of the treaty it signed at the time of accession. So the argument is that this inevitably means Poland has to leave. Now, there are legal mechanisms by which the EU could kick Poland out, but they've never been tested. They've never even been suggested. So that's really, really unclear. And what could be more likely is that Poland just kind of has to leave technically voluntarily, but because the EU has basically frozen its EU funding or made EU membership impossible for it. Now, I mentioned that EPP statement earlier. It should be important to note that the EPP has been headed up by Donald Tusk, the former European Council president, who's now the effective opposition leader in Poland. He has every interest in making Polish people understand that their EU membership is at stake here. The next Polish election will be in 2023, but could come earlier if there's a political crisis as a result of this and a snap election has to be called. Donald Tusk will make the argument that that next Polish general election is effectively a referendum on Poland's membership of the EU. If the Polish people vote to keep the ruling Law and Justice Party in power, they are voting to leave the EU. And so I think this constitutional crisis is going to kind of unfold over the next 2 years because I think the EU is going to want the Polish people to be given an opportunity to have a say here. Do they really want to put Poland on this course that means the country could have to leave the EU, or do they want to change that direction? But I don't know. This is also a very acute political crisis, and people have really grown exasperated with the ruling Law and Justice Party, and it may be that people demand action sooner, such as freezing EU budget payments, and that could put this to a head a lot earlier than that election, which, as I mentioned, could come as late as 2023.
All right. Thank you very much, Dave. Dave Keating reporting from Brussels. And moments ago, the EU Commission reiterating that EU law does indeed have primacy over national law.